1971, Chicago. Federal Prosecutor's Office. The air smells like paper, coffee, and quiet threat. Hugh Hefner sits across from three FBI agents. No robe, no smile for the press. Just a man in a dark suit, hands relaxed on his knees. On the table between them, a cardboard box filled with documents marked Playboy. Names inside it could end careers. Senators, judges, business leaders. The senior agent leans forward. His voice is calm, practiced. We know about the files, the recordings, the leverage. You will destroy everything in that box today, or your empire will collapse within a week. Silence. Hefner's lawyer grips his pen too tightly. One agent avoids eye contact. Another watches Hefner's face, waiting for panic, begging. A deal. Hefner looks at the box, then at the men. He smiles, not bravely, not nervously, precisely. He says one word. The room goes still. That word will protect him for decades. It will also condemn him. But to understand why he could say it, why he dared to say it, you have to go back 15 years. To a broke magazine editor in a one-room apartment. To a marriage already cracked. To the moment he learned that success could be sharper than revenge. This didn't start as a magazine. It started as a system. Let us know where you're watching from, and we hope you enjoy the story. Chicago, winter of 1953. The radiator in the one-room apartment hissed like a tired animal. Hugh Hefner sat at the kitchen table in his shirt sleeves, staring at a letter from Esquire. $5. That was all he had asked for. $5 more a week. The editor's refusal was neat, polite, final. On the counter, a stack of unpaid bills curled at the edges from damp air. $600 in debt. His wife, Millie, was in the bedroom, asleep with a hand resting on her pregnant belly. Their first son's toys were scattered near the door. Everything in the room said small. He slid his wedding ring around his finger, back and forth, as if testing whether it could still move. He had grown up believing monogamy was safety, order, a promise. Now he felt it differently, as a system designed to keep men obedient and afraid of risk. He opened a cheap notebook and wrote one sentence slowly. Create a world where I make the rules. That night, Millie told him the truth. Her voice was flat, like she was reading weather. Before the wedding, she had been with someone else. Their first son might not be his. Hefner didn't shout. He didn't move. He looked at the ring again and said quietly, I knew, and I will use it. Something in him went cold, not broken, hardened. This was no longer about love or humiliation. It was about leverage. December arrived with dirty snow and a decision. He borrowed $500 from his mother, lying about a safe publishing venture. The money went to buy the rights to nude photos of Marilyn Monroe. When her agent summoned him, the room felt too warm, the air thick with threat. Hefner's hands shook under the table as he placed a mock-up of his new magazine in front of the man. The agent stared at the cover for 8 long seconds. You're insane, he said. Then let me make her immortal, Hefner replied. The agent stood. Do it. Hefner barely made it to the restroom before vomiting from adrenaline. The first issue of Playboy went on sale without a date on the cover. He wasn't sure there would ever be a second one. 54,000 copies vanished within weeks. Then something strange happened. The Catholic Church began buying stacks of the magazine to burn them publicly. The fires drew crowds. The crowds created scarcity. Street prices tripled. Hefner mailed an anonymous copy to a Chicago cardinal with a note. This is a sin you must destroy. He watched one of the burnings from his office window, smiling for the first time in years. He bought his first tailored suit. He came home late, Millie asleep, and realized he already lived in a different world from her. By 1956, Playboy sold 600,000 copies a month. His first real office opened. On his desk lay a file from a private detective, proof Millie was seeing someone else again. Hefner read it, then fed the pages into a small office burner. "It doesn't matter anymore," he told the detective, "but keep watching. Everyone." He opened a drawer and removed a list. 47 names. The game had begun. The house on State Parkway did not feel like a home. It felt like an instrument. 70 rooms, purchased in 1959 for a price that still made Chicago bankers uneasy. Beneath the polished floors and tasteful furniture ran a second architecture. Wires threaded through walls, vents, and light fixtures. Hugh Hefner walked the corridors at night in a silk robe, listening not for footsteps, but for silence. Silence meant the system was working. The microphones were real, not improvised. Commercial grade, available to federal agencies and large corporations by the late 1950s if you knew whom to ask and how much cash to offer. Every bedroom, every guest room, every hallway. The recordings fed into a reinforced room in the basement where reels were cataloged, labeled, and locked away. Hefner did not listen to everything. He didn't need to. Power came from knowing that he could. Only one man confronted him. Tony Spinelli, former intelligence, now head of security, stood in the study holding a wiring schematic with a tight jaw. "This is a federal crime," Tony said. "Only if it becomes public," Hefner replied. "And if I talk?" Hefner slid a thin folder across the desk. Inside were photographs of Tony's wife with another man. The room stayed quiet. "When do we start?" Tony asked. The first tape was a gift. A state senator, drunk, discussing bribes like grocery items. Hefner listened with a pipe between his fingers, taking notes not on what was said, but on who said it and why. From that moment, the mansion stopped being a party house. It became a filter. People arrived powerful. They left vulnerable. By 1961, the Black Book existed. Over 200 names: judges, mayors, police chiefs, union leaders, men who preached morality in daylight and negotiated corruption after midnight. Each visit was logged, each voice preserved. One room remained untouched. No microphones, no wires. Hefner used it rarely. In April 1962, Mayor Richard Daley threatened to shut down the Chicago Playboy Club for obscenity. Hefner invited him over. They spoke for an hour behind closed doors. No recordings exist. Witnesses later said Daley entered stiff and left altered, his face drawn tight, as if he had seen something irreversible. The next morning, he praised Playboy as a legitimate enterprise. In the Black Book, a new entry appeared. No details, just a date. The government noticed. In 1963, under J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI opened an investigation into Playboy. Officially, it was about indecency. Unofficially, it was about tapes. A sealed envelope changed everything, delivered through intermediaries. Inside, a copy, not an original. Information about Hoover himself, enough to end a career if it ever surfaced. The message was clear without being written. The investigation collapsed overnight. Insufficient evidence. Tony poured a drink that evening and didn't smile. "You're in a game you can't leave now," he said. "I never planned to," Hefner answered. By 1964, the mansion pulsed with secrets. But one night, alone in his office, Hefner found something new hidden behind his desk panel. A listening device, Soviet make. He held it between his fingers, light and precise. For the first time, he understood the truth. He was no longer the only one listening. The device from the desk drawer sat on the table like a verdict. Soviet manufacture. Precision work. Hugh Hefner didn't call the police. He didn't call Tony. He poured a drink and stared at it until the ice dissolved. The realization settled slowly and completely. The mansion was no longer just a trap he controlled. It was neutral ground. Everyone was playing here. Intelligence agencies, organized crime, foreign services, and they all believed the same thing: that Hefner either already worked for them or eventually would. In March 1965, the knock came without warning. Two men, conservative suits, no wasted movements. One introduced himself as James Angleton, CIA Counterintelligence. He spoke calmly, like a doctor delivering a diagnosis. "We know about the recordings," he said. "You cooperate. You're protected. You refuse, and those tapes become evidence." Hefner didn't answer immediately. He walked to the window, waited just long enough to look careless. "Gentlemen," he said, "I already work with you. Have for 2 years." Angleton's pen stopped. Hefner continued, bluffing with absolute confidence. He mentioned a Soviet diplomat who had spoken too freely weeks earlier, a conversation the CIA had intercepted by chance. Hefner let them believe it wasn't chance. Silence filled the room. The agents exchanged a look. "We'll be in touch," Angleton said. When they left, Hefner's hands shook so badly he had to sit down. He understood something essential then. The most effective lie is the one the listener needs to be true. The real spy revealed herself in 1967. Christina Keeley, a Playboy bunny with perfect posture and curious timing. Tony's team confirmed it quietly. KGB. Hefner did nothing. Instead, he fed her information through careless staging. A document left on a desk. A murmured conversation within earshot. 1 week later, a Soviet operation collapsed spectacularly overseas. Christina was recalled. Before she left, she came to him. "You knew," she said, "from the beginning." "Why let me stay?" "Because I needed your bosses to think I was stupid." She smiled once. "You're dangerous." He burned her card after she left. He remembered the number. In 1970, Tony brought the bad news. A tape was missing. One reel. A federal judge discussing election manipulation with a union leader in 1968. Days later, the judge received threats. The FBI noticed patterns they couldn't ignore anymore. In 1971, Hefner sat in a federal office under fluorescent lights. An ultimatum was delivered cleanly: destroy the files or be destroyed. His lawyer whispered that it was over. Hefner smiled. "No," he said. If he was arrested, 47 files would reach the Washington Post within 24 hours, including 3 men in the room. He offered a trade instead: copies for leverage, originals as insurance. To prove it wasn't a bluff, he placed 1 cassette on the table. A conversation from 1954. Their superior's voice. Silence followed. The case vanished. In the limousine afterward, Tony asked if the 47 files were real. "Of course not," Hefner said. "There are 200. The city lights slid past the windows. Hefner finally understood the cost. The real game was just beginning. After the agreement with federal prosecutors, Hugh Hefner became untouchable in ways few men ever are. Playboy peaked. 7 million copies a month. Clubs across continents. The Los Angeles mansion purchased in 1971 as a sunlit symbol of victory. To outsiders, it looked like freedom made concrete. To Hefner, it was a command center with better lighting. The parties never stopped. Neither did the files. In January 1976, Barbie Benton left without warning. 8 years beside him, 8 years inside the system. The reason wasn't another man. It was worse. One night she woke and saw Hefner standing by the window, a folder open in his hands. He didn't notice her watching. She shouldn't have seen that, he muttered to himself. Barbie understood instantly. There was a file on her. Recordings, notes, private moments archived like evidence. By morning, the realization had frozen into clarity. She had never been a partner. She had been a subject. She packed in silence. "Why are you leaving?" Hefner asked, almost curious. "Because you don't love," she said evenly. "You document." He didn't argue. He nodded once. She never returned. For the first time in 2 decades, Hefner sat alone in his office. He opened the safe and laid out 37 folders, every woman he had ever been close to. He held a lighter over the first file. His hand shook. The flame never touched paper. He closed the safe. "This is all I have," he whispered. In July 1977, Tony Spinelli died of a heart attack. The man who knew everything was gone. The day before his death, he left a sealed envelope. Inside was a letter and a bank box number in Zurich. Tony had copied the most sensitive files, not out of betrayal, but containment. "You're a prisoner of your own system," the letter read. Hefner flew to Switzerland alone. The box held tapes, photographs, documents, insurance on the insurance. Sitting in a quiet hotel room, he cried for the first time in years. Not for Tony, for the realization that escape was no longer possible. The warning came earlier, but it took time to land. In 1975, Bobby Arnstein, his executive assistant and most loyal operator, was arrested on drug charges. The FBI offered a deal. She refused. Not out of devotion, but terror. 2 weeks after her release, she was found dead. Officially, an overdose. Days later, Hefner received a note. She didn't kill herself. We helped. No signature, just a reminder. He attended her funeral wearing dark glasses. He didn't approach the family. That night, he doubled security and began carrying a gun. By December 1978, Hefner was 52, a billionaire and alone. New Year's Eve filled the mansion with 500 guests, music, champagne, laughter. Hefner sat upstairs behind one-way glass, watching the illusion perform itself. A young woman asked why he wasn't celebrating. "Down there is theater," he said. "Up here is truth." The phone rang the next morning. "Someone has a file on you," the voice said. For the first time, Hugh Hefner understood. The empire didn't protect him anymore. It was hunting him. The call from 1978 never left him. Hefner spent the next years circling his own shadow, hiring investigators who didn't know who hired them, leaning on favors owed by men who avoided eye contact when they delivered reports. Every trail ended clean. Too clean. Whoever held the file on him understood erasure better than he did. In March 1982, he made a decision he had avoided for decades. Christy Hefner became president of the company, and for the first time he allowed someone inside the perimeter. Not fully. Never fully. One evening, after the offices emptied, he told her there were things buried inside Playboy that could not surface without destroying it. She listened without interrupting. Then she said quietly, "You mean the recordings?" He froze. "I've known since 1975, she continued. "I'm an attorney. You left traces." The ground shifted. She wasn't shocked. She was prepared. Worse, she had acted. Christy told him she had hired someone to investigate the threats already forming around the company. Someone experienced, someone discreet. She didn't ask permission. She protected the asset. And she had discovered the name he feared. Roy Cohn. Cohn had spent 3 decades collecting leverage like currency. His assistant had copied portions of Hefner's archive years earlier. Not all of it. Enough. Insurance stacked on insurance. Christie spoke clinically, like a surgeon describing a tumor. Hefner realized something that unsettled him more than betrayal. She wasn't on his side. She was on the company's. In August 1986, Roy Cohn lay dying in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and inevitability. Hefner sat beside the bed. No witnesses. "You came for the file," Cohn rasped. "Where is it?" "Burned," Cohn said, "because I finally learned something you never did." "What?" "Files aren't power. Fear is. And I'm not afraid anymore." Before Hefner could respond, Cohn smiled faintly. "I left you a copy. You'll get it later, if you're still alive." Cohn died 2 days later. The company began to bleed money soon after. Competition, new media, creditors circling, auditors asking questions that drifted too close to classified expenses labeled security. Christie confronted him. "We disclose part of the truth," she said, "or we lose everything." For the first time, Hefner hesitated. He chose family aloud. That night, alone, he retrieved duplicate files from a deeper cache. The gesture had been symbolic, not real. In August 1987, the package arrived from Cohn's attorney. Inside, a cassette and a letter. Hefner listened alone. Cohn's voice. Then another, distorted, calm. "He must never know who I am," the voice said. "I'm closer than he thinks." Hefner replayed it until the words lost shape. Then he looked around his office, at faces in photographs, at people he trusted. He summoned 3 of them the next day, said nothing, watched everything. For the first time, the hunter understood the truth. He was the prey. By the late 80s, Hugh Hefner no longer trusted patterns, only fractures. He married Kimberly Conrad in 1989, smiling for cameras, presenting stability as proof of renewal. 2 sons followed. The mansion adjusted itself around diapers and nannies, but the core remained unchanged. Hefner slept lightly, waking at small sounds, his mind always measuring distance between loyalty and access. In 1990, he built a test. 3 false files, each seeded with a microscopic flaw only one person would recognize. One remained in his office. One he entrusted to the company's CEO. One he showed to Christie, framed as an artifact of the past. He waited. 6 months later, an anonymous envelope arrived. Inside was a copy of the 3rd file. Christie's marker was intact. He invited her to dinner, watched her hands, her voice, the ease with which she discussed quarterly reports. Finally, he placed the document between them. "Explain," he said. She didn't deny it. She explained. Threats had reached her first. She'd hired a former federal investigator to identify the source. To prove seriousness, she'd shared a sample. The man had sold it. "I was protecting you," she said. The words landed wrong. Hefner understood then that secrecy had reproduced itself. He had taught her this language. Nothing between them recovered after that night. In 1998, Kimberly moved out with the children. Officially married, practically finished. She found a microphone in their bedroom. He claimed it was old, disconnected. She believed it had never truly been removed. "I love you," she said, "but you live with ghosts." He didn't follow her. That winter, alone in the mansion, he found a cassette labeled with her name and years. Their first laughter, their beginning. He burned it without listening again. The act brought no relief. In November 1999, the last letter arrived. Polite, final. It promised a reckoning, not revenge. A month later, a package delivered the truth. Recordings of him. Documents he never created. Medical records. Copies of diaries he believed untouchable. Proof that while he collected secrets, he had been catalogued. On New Year's Eve, as the world celebrated a new millennium, Hefner opened both safes. He carried everything outside. At midnight, he burned it all. His archives. Their archives. The fire consumed decades. He felt nothing resembling freedom, only absence. The mansion behind him stood quiet. For the first time, there was nothing left to protect. Only time. After the fire, Hugh Hefner tried to perform normality. New women moved into the mansion, younger, brighter, unfamiliar with the old rules yet bound by them instinctively. Holly Madison, Bridget Marquardt, Kendra Wilkinson, faces that would later smile from television screens as if the house were a dream. The cameras loved it. America did too. Hefner played his role flawlessly. Inside, he felt hollowed out. The reality show turned the mansion into a stage. Lights replaced shadows. Confessionals replaced secrecy. Yet the structure remained unchanged. Curfews were enforced. Decisions were centralized. Affection was conditional. When Holly asked to leave, he didn't raise his voice. He explained consequences, contracts, influence, doors that would quietly close forever. She stayed. Fear is efficient. Years passed. In 2008, during renovations, workers uncovered a sealed room behind a false wall. Old tapes, forgotten files, the past imperfectly buried. Hefner stood in the doorway for a long time. He ordered most of it destroyed. One cassette he kept, labeled with 3 letters and a year. He never played it. He only needed to know it existed. Age arrived without ceremony. Names slipped. Time folded. He began asking guards if they were recording him. Sometimes he forgot there were no more files. Sometimes he remembered too clearly. In 2016, he married Crystal Harris. She stayed when others didn't. Not because she understood the system, but because she saw the man left behind after it collapsed. One afternoon, he told her the truth in pieces. Not about power, about loss. "I thought secrets made me real," he said. "Without them, I wasn't sure I existed." In September 2017, near the end, he asked for the cassette, the last one. "Destroy it," he whispered. "Don't listen." Why keep it at all? Because I was afraid that without secrets, I was nothing. His final words were quiet, unperformed. "I didn't lose the game," he said. "I lost myself." He died at 9:19 p.m. The next day, Crystal burned the cassette. Not for morality, for closure. At the funeral, the world praised a visionary. In the back row sat 4 women who knew better. They didn't cry. They understood the cost. The mansion was sold. 70 rooms. Empty. Hugh Hefner built an empire to escape control. It became his cage.